The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for Monash.
Thank you for the call, Deputy Speaker. I appreciate it. Over the past year or so, I've been following Matt Barry, an award-winning Australian technology entrepreneur who has his finger well and truly on Australia's housing pulse, a pulse that is weak, sluggish and desperate need of immediate resuscitation. As Matt said recently, the root of all evil in this country is the astronomical price of housing. Once you understand all the ramifications of that, it's really the problem that is the root of all problems. I couldn't agree more, Matt. Matt also delivering a sobering message. He said that it is now mathematically impossible for a household on the median income to pay off a mortgage in Australia. What happened to the lucky country? What happened to the clever country? And since when did the offer of a car park to sleep in for homeless women and their children become a solution? The current situation is, despite the Reserve Bank increasing interest rates to get a hold of inflation, property prices in Australia in capital cities have continued to surge another 20% last year. Matt Barry again said that a home is considered astronomically unaffordable by economists if it costs more than 5 times the average salary. In Australia, the average capital city home is 9 times the average salary of Australians. And in Sydney, it's an eye-watering 13 times. So who's to blame? This has been an issue on the horizon for years, decades now, so the blame has to be appointed to all sides of politics. But Labor's immigration policy, bringing in 518,000 people in 2022-23, has only served to inflame this already hot issue to the point where it's now home ownership is unaffordable for the vast majority of the Australian population. The solution: economist Yanis Varoufakis is told the Equity Mates podcast another 1 million homes were needed in Australia within the next 3 years. He said that any measures to increase the affordability of housing, such as lowering interest rates or government grants, would only increase prices. Australia is in the middle of a dire housing crisis, and the impact on families with young children is particularly distressing. Not only is housing ridiculously expensive, but both to rent and to buy, but the homes are simply not there. In response to this, the government claims they can build over 1 million houses in just 5 years. As it's said in the great story, they're dreaming. Australians need these homes desperately, but there are significant limitations that will prevent this ambitious target from being met. Firstly, new housing starts came in at the lowest level in more than a decade last year, 90,000 below an annual target of 240,000 homes. Secondly, Australian builders and construction firms are collapsing at an unprecedented rate. According to ASIC, between July 2022 and April 23, 1,709 building and construction companies across Australia went into administration. These aren't just small companies. These are big names like Porter Davis, ProBuild, Pivotal Homes, and many who have been operating for decades. Thirdly, across New South Wales, migrant families are apparently taking up more than 35,000 social housing tenancies, over 22% of all tenancies in the state. And on top of this, there's a dire shortage of skilled building workers. Between collapsing construction companies, scarcity of skilled workers and booming population, how on earth can we build enough houses for Australians and the hundreds of thousands of migrants hoping Australia will give them a better life? The government of the day can make all the promises they like. They can throw billions of taxpayers' funds to the states, but at the end of the day, the homes are simply not being built. We need to rebuild our collapsing construction industries, and quickly, before the housing crisis becomes a humanitarian crisis. And the facts show that there is stark inequality between the ability to own a home in my generation as compared to those much younger. Wages are not going up at the rate housing is going up. In fact, at the moment, wages are at the greatest decline in purchasing power terms ever. And for 20 to 24-year-olds in the last year, the real purchasing power of wages went back to 2008 levels. We all know that governments love to talk about how they're going to solve our problems, but actually doing it is a very different story. The truth is, contrary to what we are told, Australia's housing crisis isn't a very complicated problem to fix. In fact, the solution is rather simple. Australia's priority should be to create an environment where the RBA is encouraged to reduce interest rates, which the recent federal budget certainly hasn't allowed. With lower interest rates, levels of investment in housing can return back to what they used to be. Naturally, this will encourage more houses to be built, thus increasing the supply of houses to build and to rent. There is also another underlying problem for our young people, which no doubt also has its role to play in the housing crisis at hand. Young people even with high-level qualifications, are struggling to get into the jobs that they want. This may be due to things like the receding economy or the increased presence of international students, but the point is this: the barrier to home ownership and job choice, which are significant parts of growing up, is too high and affecting our kids' attitudes to life.